Can I wait? Knowing that if mom says, no, you have to share that toy with your sister, you can't have it right now, that I'll survive. And it's not that bad. And mom gets to set some of these rules, and it's okay, because basically they're taking good care of me. I feel safe and good. I feel loved. I can wait. A little waiting's not going to hurt me. Now, there's some kids that don't like a little waiting and don't seem to know how to manage it and stay calm on the inside. These are the foundations of emotional self-control. They are the foundations for the self-regulatory system. The ability to match your mood and your body and your movement and your voice and everything to the situation. There are sometimes you go to church, there's certain rules. I should be quiet, I should pay attention a little bit. I go out to the playground, there are different rules. I can run, I can yell a little bit, I can play, I can be big. And then there's some times when I should be quiet. And then there's some times when I should be calm and strong. And then there's some times when I can be goofy. Knowing how to know which is the situation, what's the right behaviors that match that situation, that's self-regulation. Matching yourself, your voice, your mood, your behaviors, your voice, everything to those appropriate situations as they present themselves. How do you learn these things? How do you learn to self-calm? The optimal time for the development of self-regulation for these basic emotional self-regulatory behaviors is birth to age 4. I'm going to give you some good news. Even after age 4, you can still learn these things. It just takes a little more effort and a little more consistency on the part of moms and dads and teachers to help kids from 4 till about 11 or 12 learn these things. That's the second optimal phase. If, however, you do not learn basic self-regulation before you become an adolescent, and those chemicals, brain chemicals and hormones start to flow during the adolescent phase, if you do not learn a certain foundational level of self-regulation by the time you hit adolescence, it's really hard to develop those laters in life. I'll never say impossible, because even as an adult, we can certainly improve our capacity for self-regulation through exercise, prayer, meditation, biofeedback. There's all kinds of ways we can do it. We can just practice taking the breath, getting calm, getting reasonable. But if we don't do a good job of these things during the first 4 years and or the first 11 or 12 years, it's a whole lot harder to turn some kid around. Yes?
The same rules apply for the children that might have some kind of learning disability ADHD.
Let's think about what I've just been describing. Let's talk about something like attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Do kids with ADD, ADHD, do they struggle to self-regulate? Do kids with autism struggle to self-regulate? Do kids with pretty much any special need have some manifestations of this? Are there some kids for whom developing self-regulation is harder? And their parents and or their teachers are going to have to find ways to work and help them develop self-regulation that go above and beyond what normal kids need. Yes, but ultimately things like attention and focusing for learning are self-regulatory in their basic nature. Staying calm and strong on the inside, learning to go there for social activities, for learning activities, for athletic activities, for family activities, all of these depend on self-regulation. So yes, there's a huge connection. How about even things like anxiety and depression? I'm getting into that anxious state. Well, if I don't know how to self-regulate, I don't know how to pull myself away from that. So self-regulation ties into, and if you don't have it, makes it way more possible for you to have manifestations of all of those different conditions that we have just described. Self-regulation, some kids need more practice, more help to develop it, a whole lot more in some cases, and we should give it to them. Mostly today we're talking about normal development, but I'll go to those special needs whenever you want me to. Oh. You see the importance of this? And do you see that there is a prime time, birth to 4, birth to 11 or 12, when we need to establish that foundation that will make a difference for the rest of the life of this child. And so, how important is it? Well, the answer is really important. Here's just a little bit of research. I don't try to throw too much of this at you, but this is a good one. They looked at more than 1,000 kids in this longitudinal study in New Zealand. The kids with self-regulation were compared to kids with low self-regulation. The kids with solid self-reg compared to the kids with low self-regulation. And here's what we can predict. The kids with low self-regulation are far more likely to smoke, have health problems, and lousy credit. Anybody see the connection between credit card problems and self-regulation? Anybody ever felt that personally? Don't raise your hand. You don't have to identify yourself. 3 times more likely to commit a crime and get caught. 3 times more likely to have multiple addictions. Twice as likely to be single parents. Self-regulation plays out in so many different ways in your life. How many of you know the marshmallow experiment? Some of you have read or know about this. I had a wonderful experience the other day. I was actually teaching some things that were related to this to a group of grandparents out in Wyoming. It was wonderful. And there's a lot of grandparents raising kids in the world today. Did you know that? And so we had a whole big collection of them out there, and I was teaching them about some of these foundational social emotional skills. And there was this one kid in the room. He was about 9 or 10 years of age. I'm contrasting him in my mind with the kid that I saw in the Wendy's. And when I first saw him there, I made an incorrect assumption. I saw this kid coming in with his grandmother, and I thought, uh-oh, this is one of those troubled kids. He's probably been kicked out of school. He's in trouble of some kind or another. He's going to be one of those slightly behaviorally disordered kids that ends up coming with somebody because nobody will watch him. They couldn't find a babysitter, whatever the case might be. He's out of school. Nobody will watch this kid. He's coming with grandma. I've seen that before. This was not that at all. His grandma takes care of him and raises him. But he's a good, strong kid. And she doesn't have a car. It was broken. And he was released from school because she lived way outside of town. And she was riding a bus to come into the senior center and hear this presentation and participate in this workshop. And because his grandma needed help and support, he had been excused from school to bring his grandma to the workshop so that she could participate. In fact, when I asked this question, have any of you heard of the marshmallow experiment? The only person in the room who had was him. And so I had him stand up and explain it to people. And he did a really good job. He had read about this or heard about it or seen the videotapes that represent it. And so the marshmallow experiment was done way back in the 1960s by this guy named Walter Mischel. And what he did was take 4-year-olds, well, actually he trained his researchers because they did it with a fairly large number of kids. And the way they did it was the researcher would meet the child, we would go into the little examination room and we would play for a while. They would play some little table games and they would talk and build a little bit of a connection, a little sense of trust and safety. They didn't just throw the kid into the test until this connection had been established with the researcher. And then the researcher would say this to the child, I'm going to leave in just a minute. I'm going to put a bell on the table. If you ring that bell, did I say these were 4-year-old children? If you ring that bell, I will come right back in and I will bring you 1 marshmallow. Anytime you want me to come back, you ring the bell, I'll come right back. But if you wait about 15 minutes until I come back on my own, I will bring you 2. What a goofy little experiment. Which kids will wait 15 minutes for an extra single marshmallow? Really? Well, what the researchers were really looking for was what would kids do? How would certain kids kind of occupy their minds and keep themselves distracted so that they weren't constantly thinking about the reward? So how would some kids manage to get themselves to wait a little longer than other kids? The magic of this research is that they followed these kids up for a very long time, for a couple of decades, to see how the difference between those who could wait and those who could not wait would play out in their lives. What do you think they found? The kids who could wait for 15 minutes for the second marshmallow were more likely to be respectful of adult authority in school, more likely to achieve and learn at higher levels, more likely to stay out of trouble in middle school and high school, more likely to finish high school, more likely to go on for some kind of advanced learning after high school, more likely to be successful on the job, and more likely to be successful in relationships. Every kind of indicator you would want for good learning and for a better life. And this one just blows me away. The kids who could wait for 15 minutes compared to the ones who couldn't, on average, had a 210-point higher SAT score. That's a lot on the SATs, which are a 1,600-point scale. 200 points makes a big old difference. If you invented some tutoring program and you could put out an advertisement and say, we will promise you a 200-point increase on your child's SATs in junior and senior year in high school, do you know how many millions and jillions of dollars you could make selling that? This is a huge outcome. Based not on an IQ test. The marshmallow test is not an IQ test. It's simply a test of which kids can wait a little extra time for a single little extra marshmallow, 2 instead of 1. Why? Somebody explain to me why those kids learn better. This is not an IQ test. How did they do so much better?
They learn impulse control and self-regulation.
And how did that play out? How did that make them learn better?
Because on a standardized test, you have to make sure to read the entire question.
So
and
they're
not just
more
jump.
focused.